Hello, everybody. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you're at, welcome to the space. Welcome to the podcast, and glad to have you here today. Whether it's in the morning, whether you're getting started on the weekend when this podcast goes live, or you're catching up midweek. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this conversation, and it's gonna be a challenging one. It's gonna be getting real about running a roasting company and all the things that go into that. Because surprise, surprise, running a roasting company does not just mean you're roasting tasty coffee. So,
keyword is just.
Keyword, folks, is just. No, we're not talking about justice. We're talking about just. All right, let's pour some batch. Whoa, easy. That's good.
I brewed a whole liter.
Dude,
I thought it would be beneficial to extraction.
We need Max back on the podcast. He helped us finish the entire carafe.
Dude, so did Edwin.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We need to bring on some guests. I still had some of our Gucci still in that mug.
A blend.
A little blend, yeah. Folks, do you guys do you dump out the coffee that you had laying in your mug, or do you just top it off?
It's probably good practice.
What, topping it off?
No.
Yeah,
tossing it out.
Folks, you heard it there on the Mirror podcast. Good practice is topping off your brew.
My math teacher in high school didn't wash us cup. It wasn't a cup. It was one of those plastic, big, 3-liter things that you drink soda in. But he drank coffee in.
That you drink soda in?
One of those 7-Eleven big
things.
No
way.
With the handle, with the straw, with the connecting thing. Yeah.
This is the worst. Wow.
He drank coffee, I believe, out of that, as far as I remember. Now I'm thinking back, I'm like, dude, that was crazy. You ever really remember?
Crazy. Wow.
What was his name? He had a ponytail. Wasn't he your math teacher too?
No. Maybe. No.
Mr. Bonhoeffer? No. Mr. Bonchev?
Mr. Bonchev. Yeah, Mr. Bonchev. There he is.
That's
yeah,
it.
Wow.
Man, I wonder what he's up to these days. What kind of coffee was he sipping on?
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
Oh, man. Mirror Coffee Roasters coming to high school near you in the cafeteria.
Yeah, dude. Oh, yeah, dude, that'd be fire. Just post up like a little pop-up. It's incredible.
I did that once.
Folks, for those of you who are just listening, I know we leave you guys out sometimes out of the visual aspect of what people on YouTube, or if you watch us on Spotify, you can literally watch us on Spotify. We pour a cup of drip, a cup of batch brew, freshly made, freshly squeezed. And we we just critique the roast, critique the coffee, critique our most of the time it's being disappointed on our grind setting.
Yeah.
Even though I think this is nailed, dude. Mm-hmm. I think this is a powerful brew.
Yeah.
From a grind setting standpoint, from a brew standpoint.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm a huge fan of this coffee though.
Yeah. Not a huge fan of the coffee, but it's good brew. I think, I used grind size 12.
Maybe that's the lucky grind size.
But I also used a 1:16 ratio with 1 liter. So what is that? What is that? Siri, what's 1,000 divided by 16?
62.
62.
Is it?
Well, Siri didn't respond, but I trust your knowledge more than Siri's.
Dude, I don't know. Test it.
Hey, Siri. Hey, Siri, are you on? Oh, man. Oh, there she is. Hey, what's going on? Hey, what's 1,000 divided by 16?
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
You're useless.
It's very simple. What's 1,000 divided by 16?
It's 62.5.
Let's go. You don't need Siri when you got a noggin. You got a noggin.
16 is a tough one to divide by. I don't know. If it was 15.
I did it because I've done that. I've done that exact math problem multiple times because I've had to brew a batch.
Classic math, classic coffee math.
This coffee, after it sits around, the aftertaste is kind of like a plum I'm getting. the very far aftertaste, like after you haven't taken a sip for like a minute or so.
The lingering aftertaste.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I'm happy
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah, it's solid. Honestly, it's solid.
Good old Peru.
It's always yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. We had a Peru. They're
Didn't
usually
taste like this.
no.
It's much brighter.
Yeah, usually Peruvian coffees are pretty bright, insane acidity, but then they have like some nice sweetness going on. Like I loved it. We had our Peru. I don't remember the flavor notes, but it was just like really high end.
Yeah.
On batch, it slapped. It did great, and then it had this nice stone fruit sweetness.
It's juicy. Round. Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of a Kenyan.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah. Big shout out to Wilmer Cardozo.
That's right.
That's right.
That's the producer of the coffee. You know, something that I really actually have enjoyed about roasting is that I naturally gravitate to talk about coffees and calling them out by producer name.
Yeah, for sure.
Likewise. It almost feels more natural for me to call that out than saying, oh, that whoosh whoosh or that Kirinyaga or you know.
Yeah.
It just feels natural, especially like when, which we're actually talking about that next week. Forget it.
We are? Oh, sick.
Yeah. We're also dropping a couple things next weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing we're dropping
I
specifically
remember
for you podcast listeners, you guys, the amazing community that we have built up. We're approaching 10,000 listens on our podcast, which is bonkers. Like that's insane.
It's fun.
And
it's good stat.
It's not insane a lot. It's not Joe Rogan, folks. I get it.
No.
But it's incredible to say nonetheless, you know, and all the connections we've built. So anyways, we're just trying to find new ways, cool ways to, you know, engage with you guys and continue to serve y'all. And so we have a treat waiting for you for that time. So lots of fun stuff next weekend, a couple new coffees dropping, which is fun over the next couple weeks. I think if we can bust those out
hopefully
in time. Yeah. And so lots of fun stuff. But anyways, we're excited for this upcoming year because, you know, winter is kind of a dreary time for buying green coffee.
Yeah.
Usually it's hard to get your hands on some really, really fresh green. Not always. For example, Peru, there's a lot of new arrivals right now actually coming. Colombia's got a couple new fresh arrivals coming.
But Kenya too?
Kenya's on its way. It should be landing any month as well. Yeah. So we're kind of getting into that season where there's a lot of really, really fun coffees that are dropping and they're all fresh, like fresh show. So that's the cool thing. Like coffees are tasting at their peak in the next couple months probably. So, we're just getting past the winter storm.
Yeah, the winter, the darkness, the winter. I can't find another simile or metaphor, but y'all know how winters are. It can be pretty dreary.
What's the winter when it's like equal day, equal night? Solstice?
That's a change in. I think that's changing. I don't even know. I'm about to pull out Siri again, but
no. She's like, I don't have an answer for that. Okay, thank you.
Now, solstice has something to do with the moon, eh?
I think so.
Something like that.
I thought it was like equal when you have equal day and equal night.
No, doesn't sit right. Maybe. I mean, it just.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the solstice.
That being said, just folks, hang on tight. There's lots of fresh, fun coffees from everyone, and the thing is that, you know, this is coffees are seasonal. They're harvested, and I know a lot of you guys know this.
Yeah.
And roasters are all buying coffees kind of at the same time, sort of. You know, when the coffee lands into the United States, it lands for everybody almost. Which means like green coffee buying has always been just like a land grab. Like the coffee roaster that finds that little gem, they get to keep the gem. You know what I mean? It's literally buying green coffee is you're like literally sorting through the rut of samples of your relationships and all this jazz to find those gems of coffees, which has already been complicated on its own. Like to get green coffee from pre-ship samples to when it lands, when for the quality to stay the same for you to get, an excellent bean, but also getting your hands on it in the first place is already like a craft of its own. Like that's why there are green coffee buyers.
That's what I was going to say.
Literally, it's a job.
It's a job. There's also a difference between like sourcing spot coffees versus sourcing coffees that are on arrival, or if you're actually sourcing like within the farmer's like
At
origin.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different ball game too. To source at origin is, in my opinion, like much harder to establish that, and also like forward booking. That's another thing. Popular way to do it is like work on a commitment with the farmer.
Yeah.
Sometimes contract based to buy a coffee that is not yet harvested.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of high risk, high reward kind of thing. You don't know.
High risk, high reward. Yeah.
You might get the tastiest like coffee you've ever gotten from that producer, or you have to stick through a commitment and get just subpar or mediocre. It changes. There's no guarantee in that.
For sure.
And that's much different than if you would say, hey, like I want to work with like Cafe Imports or Royal or Atlas and see what they have in the United States to the closest location near where you're located. Like for
Centrally
us,
at the warehouse.
Yeah, for us, it's what's our closest?
There's the Green Room, and then there's Costa Oro in Fife or Fife
in Portland. Costa Oro is
no, they're also in Portland.
Yeah,
there's one in
Fife.
near Tacoma.
Yeah.
Fife. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And then a lot of the coffees that we receive come through Annex, right?
Yeah. So there's and both are challenging, in their own way. Like finding, sourcing coffee off of spot. You still have to cup, you still have to taste, you still have to know what you're buying. Sometimes you can get a great sample, but when the coffee arrives, it's not the same. And that's a whole other question. Like that's a whole other discussion. But regardless, what the challenge is often is knowing which coffee to buy and then having access to that. And then also having the logistics and the infrastructure to be able to make those things happen. And why that matters is, well, for example, like we just got an email that we've been buying Jorge Mendez's coffee for 30 year. Yeah. Almost his fourth or fifth harvest.
We bought it twice in 1 year too.
We bought
a previous crop, and then we bought a current crop.
Yeah. And then we bought like another farm of his.
Booked. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we love Jorge Mendez's coffee. They're very spectacular coffees. But we just got an email that, what's the harvest is looking low volume. So what happens when you have low volume, but a lot of people are after that same coffee? At some point, somebody's gonna get left out. That's the reality of it. If you have four candies and you have 10 kids that playing recess and they're fighting for 4 candies, somebody's gonna get left out. At the end of the day. The logistics there are a little difficult, and for us, the difficult with that thing is with a bigger roasting company. Bigger roasting companies have to fulfill huge demands and huge volumes. So that becomes a little bit challenging because for a bigger roasting company, it doesn't make sense to buy one sack, which for reference, one sack is like 69 kilograms, depends.
Yeah, it's not much.
A small sack could be like a 35 kilo sack. But for a bigger roasting company, it's like, why would we buy 2 or 3 bags? Because we're trying to fulfill huge volumes. And that makes it a little challenging for them on that sense because they need a lot of coffee. But the good thing that a lot of big roasting companies have is they have buying power.
Yeah.
Buying power is exactly what it is that when you have more money, you have a little bit more leverage, and you can speak in a certain way, and you can make deals in a certain way, and you can offer certain perks or things that somebody that's smaller, we can't do that.
Yeah,
and that's the difficult part. However, there's also an upside to being small too.
Yeah,
what's that?
I mean, I would say within that, we also can turn coffees over much quicker, meaning we don't have to buy as much So we can quickly secure a smaller amount of coffee, bring it in, serve it, and then switch over to another coffee. So we can move around much quicker within our menu and how we serve our guests. But within that, we also, like you were saying about money, we don't make as much money on the coffee. No, I'm not talking about profit margins. I'm simply talking about when you sell 100 pounds of a coffee, you can only make X amount, and it's not going to be more than if you sell 1,000 pounds of the coffee.
Right.
That means there's not enough money circulating, so therefore you can't buy that quantity.
Yeah.
So I think that's also like the struggle with being like a small company. We do have the fun opportunities that when a micro lot like San Antonio comes, we can pick that up. For a bigger company, doesn't really make sense to pick up a micro lot that only has 300 pounds because that's 2 roasts.
Unless
you know what I mean?
Like unless they're going for like a really niche, niche drop, which does happen.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they need to be thinking about, we have like 10 cafes, 20 cafes that we're selling to. We need to be thinking on that big of a scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also has to do with your menu. Like what are you trying to build and what are you trying to serve on your menu? A lot of a lot of roasteries have like 2 different menus. They have a wholesale menu and then they have a kind of like direct to consumer menu that people buy online. And then that's also the other big part is blends. Most big, main one coming to my mind is like Counterculture.
Yeah.
Counterculture had a diverse menu that they had for wholesale, and then they had a kind of bigger niche menu for just direct to consumer. And then they also had their staple blends that go everywhere all the time. Classic Big Trouble, Hologram, right? Those coffees, like you can add coffees in and you can take coffees away, but the blend stays the same. So therefore you have that leverage of like, you can buy more coffees that you can sell just as a SO, but then if you need to, you can blend that coffee in to get more money in. So there's multiple revenue coming in from different items on the menu.
Now,
so that has to do with how you have defined and designed your menu.
For sure. And the difficult, that's specialty coffee, you can say, but also now commodities being brought in here as well, because of what happened in Brazil with the huge cutout and so much volume that was supposed to be produced is no longer produced. So that's one thing, but then you're also, when you bring in something like quality into the mix, where now you're not just thinking about volume, but now it has to be to a set standard and a set flavor profile. If you have, if the people buying your coffee are expecting really beautiful natural geishas, and there's only so many natural geishas,
right?
Then there's so many natural geishas, but not every natural geisha is great. Yeah. So now it's even more, your wiggle room is even smaller. But what happens when, for example, you want to get that natural geisha, but there's somebody with bigger buying power once again, and that's this isn't like a pity party, because at the end of the day, there's pros and cons to both, but that's the realities of running a business. And a lot of these logistical issues come up everywhere across the board, not just in coffee, manufacturing, technology, everywhere. Like these kinds of very nuanced details where you actually have to be able to make really great calls. And that's like that's what it means to be like a really good at what you do, really good at running a business, is that you can make calls that are actually later gonna set you up to thrive and succeed to get to where you want to be, instead of staying stagnant. Or the other difficulty is, like, if you do make a wrong move, something like high risk, high reward, sometimes those things can actually wipe you out, or there's such a big loss that you have to crawl out of those things. You know what I mean?
But also, I think all of that is also tied into like who you know. So if you have these connections that are established long term, like at some point money isn't the greatest factor. Like let's say a couple people come in and they both know Jorge Mendes. Let's just use Jorge for an example. or they all have the money. Like, let's say they have $100,000 budget to buy green for the year, but out of those 10 folks, only 2 people actually have a relationship with Jorge. For him, the sustainable model is to sell to a person with relationship, because that person is going to come back. There's established like more long-term focused kind of sell, rather than just get rid of the coffee. At the end of the day, Jorge Mendes is going to sell his coffee. You see what I mean? Like if there's a quantity, like especially in our situation right now, he has commitments to fulfill to his long-term like relationships. And at this point, the conversation isn't like this kind of sustainability conversation isn't necessarily about who has the most money. It's more or less where your connections are at this point. I
think what that made me think of is that like there's kind of been a shift over the years, especially with the price of green just skyrocketing, and now it's the leverage is actually in the hands of farmers and producers. Before it was like, the relationship was we're building relationships to empower producers and farmers as a way of like we're being intentional to be able to support the work that you're doing, so we can work together on this, and now it's almost like the conversation has flipped, where now it's like we actually, the relationships that we've built are now actually vital to us, because they're what's saving us in this time when now they have the leverage. And so I think talking about this conversation in terms of leverage is also wrong, because that's not the point of having more leverage. And
it's not about control.
It's not about control.
For sure.
It's more that now it's like we're understanding more and more that relationships matter, that things just can't run in the future of coffee till the day that I die. Things can't just run on a contract basis and on a transaction basis. Here's these green paper things, and I want it in exchange with these other green agricultural things.
Right.
It has to be far greater than that. That's just the long-term sustainability of business, of relationships.
And I think the sustainability conversation is not only for the farmer, it's for the roaster and the cafe as well.
It's across the board. Everybody.
When the whole industry is sustainable, then it benefits the farmer, it benefits the roasting company, it benefits the cafe. Everybody wins from that. So it's not necessarily like, oh man, when we're talking about leverage, we're talking about, oh, now the farmer has all the control and say, well, it's not exactly that way, because the farmer's leverage is actually beneficial to the roaster. So there's mutual, like it's a two-way street. And when it comes to relationships, that's how relationships should function. It's not a one-way street. Like we should be working together across the industry. And sometimes, it benefits one like party over the other, but it's a give and take. It's a ebb and flow. It's not like cut and dry where it's always this person winning and this person suffering all the time. It's not how it works. And I think within those like complications for us also moving forward, because we're not that big, because we don't have the money, like we have to, we don't have that huge amount of capital. We have to make decisions like almost based on a shorter term basis. Like kind of, you know what I mean? We're still planning a year and ahead, but we're not like planning to the degree where we can use our money to like basically plan for 10 years. We still have to sell an X amount of coffee in order to buy an X amount of coffee. And if we don't sell this amount of coffee, we won't have enough money in our bank account to buy the green that we plan to buy. We're always, the way we have to make decisions is much different than, let's say, a huge roasting company. And that's where my personal like thought is like, we can't take the brunt of all of that in our hands. Like when it comes to the current situation now, we just got out of COVID, or we're getting out of COVID, like things are like just freeing up. We're able to function a little better, but we're not completely free out of the logistical mess that started in 2020. You know what I mean? that mess is not over. We're still dealing with, and COVID is still a very serious thing.
Yeah.
On top of that, we're now dealing with a war.
Yeah.
And that's creating complications when everything is going up. Logistics are much harder.
Yeah.
So it's like that burden, like we can't fully carry as a small roasting company. And I'm not saying that, again, this is not a pity party, but this is like where decision making gets really, really hard. Like we need to sell coffee in order to plan for the rest of the year so that we can buy more coffee and keep going.
And it's not that bigger roasting companies don't need to sell coffee.
Yeah.
Like, once again, this is more of like the dynamics between being a smaller roaster and a bigger roaster. And as us being on the smaller end of the scale is like that requires specific kind of decision making. And this is hopefully helpful for, whether you're just not just, but whether you're a coffee drinker, to be able to give you some context to the coffee in your mug, or maybe you're a coffee roaster and you're like, am I the only one that's feeling this? Well, chances are no, like that you're kind of in this with all of us, we're all in this together, but it's more talking about more like, these are legitimate, things that we're facing and we have to kind of maneuver, and everybody's maneuvering their own kind of roadblocks and obstacles,
right?
But at the end of the day, one thing is for real, like whether we have, maybe we're on the smaller end or somebody's on the bigger end, at the end of the day, I think one thing stands true is that we want to build relationships. We want to prioritize people. We want to think in a long term, even though we may not have all the capacity to do that. Exactly. We want to be able to think, how can this be sustainable for first off, somebody else than us, in the sense of like, we want to be able to serve. We're not cutting out our values because things are a little more difficult. Instead, these are great opportunities to actually build on our values and actually see like, how can we grow in these moments like this, and at the end of the day, the thing that is standing still in core is that we want to reflect what's good. Yeah. Whether that's in a difficult circumstance, whether that's in challenging decision making, whatever it is, that is core. That is foundational, and that's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And again, it's all of us together making these decisions, because when someone goes on our website and buys a bag of coffee, they're actually making that decision that actually affects how we make that decision. So because let's say we have coffees that everybody's going to see a price increase in coffees. Like that's everyone. So like when you go and buy a coffee on the website and it's a little more than you're used to, like that's also because we paid more than we're used to for green coffee. Logistics, our shipping went up. Like I think it was one of our producers were saying that before 2020 to now, like shipping has increased 10 times. Like I don't, that's what I remember is from Brett, I believe. Something wild like that went up. Someone had to pay for that. Yeah. And you know, we're all in that together. And when it comes to like even our present situation with how we're dealing with gas prices, how we're dealing with inflation, like it's not just our job as a roaster to eat those profits and keep the pricing the same and just make less money, but it's also not the producer's job to be able to sell coffee cheaper because the C market is rising. So there's so much going on, and it's so much dynamic. It's not just like you go into the store or your cafe and all of a sudden you're like, oh, they raised their prices again. Like, why would they do that? It's way more complicated to that. And it requires a little bit of awareness. I think that's why we're talking about this, because it brings that understanding of like, if we want good coffee and if we want this to continue in this situation today, this is what needs to happen.
For sure. And, I can't be ignorant and say that nobody's using the system to exploit these things and to get a win out of it. Like, I want to acknowledge that, and I hope we can get past that, where we can think like, okay, that's not everybody. Like when we can get to a point where it's like, cool, there's people who are utilizing that for their gain. And then at the end of the day, there are many small businesses that, and businesses in general, even large ones, that are like, well, this is kind of inevitable for us to increase, but, from a mere perspective, I'm trying to always think about it as, how can we serve the people that are enjoying our coffee more, whether it's, the wholesale account, the cafe in town, whether it's the office, whether it's, the organizations that buy our coffee. It's like, how can we better serve them and put them first and there's no other way, I guess, to put it, just to serve them best, so that when they're interacting with us through through coffee, is they're getting a taste of what's good, really, at the end of the day. And that's hard. Like these seasons where your business is at stake because of a lot of these things, it gets challenging, but that should never ever change, at least for us. I don't want that to change.
And I also understand if someone can't afford to buy a coffee, or an account is like, our prices are going up, or you know what I mean? I get that. Like, that makes sense. Like, you also have to make a business decision, whether it's your personal life.
Yeah.
My rent just went up this year by $300 a month.
Yeah, that's insane.
I have to make a personal decision. Like, I can't live in downtown anymore.
Yeah.
Like, State Street is no longer affordable for me.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, I can't stay. I have to make a decision to leave. Like, so we all have to make decisions, and sometimes you have to cut a few things, and I totally get it. Like, I'm not upset. Like, to me, when someone says like something is too expensive, I'm like, word, for real?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're right. But that's also what it costs to produce something like that. Like, it's just the reality of it. It sucks, but it's the reality of it.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Like, there's not much to say there.
Word, dude. Word. All right, there you have it, folks. Show some grace to your local cafe but then also, friends, indulge in the beauty of coffee. Indulge in the wonderful creation that we have, that this is bean juice. This is delicious bean juice that tastes like Fruit Loops and apples and oranges. That is, what a blessing, dude.
The extract of the seed.
What an incredible gift that we have, So, friends, that's that. Well, thank you so much for listening. And remember, folks, reflect what's good.